Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Colleen Johnson. We talked about growing up in a town with only 125 people, learning about public speaking, and respectfully pissing people off. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Colleen. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yeah, that works.
That's great. Thank you for being here. And here I wanted to show for the people a little bit what here means. And here means, and now I need to go. So here means in my case Belgium, Ghent, Belgium. Actually, the blue dot is where my house is, but Google didn't take an updated picture anymore. But let's move to Denver, where you are. That's getting us all across the world. Denver, where, like we said in the pre-talk, Tricia and Richard Lawrence are at this very moment. So it starts to become one of the cities where I have let's say most people there. So I have to be careful not to invite too many people from Denver anymore, because we want diversity and all that kind of things. So it's still not the top city. I think Toronto and then Johannesburg have even more people, but so diversity. But I kind of jumped into that Denver, and you asked me in the pre-talk what's the time. On my side, it's now 17:45, so quarter before 6 in the evening. What's the time on your side?
It's 9:45 a.m. for me, so still.
So not only far away, but also time zones away. And it's always interesting because, for example, when I talk with people from Africa, it's a lot of kilometers away, but sometimes we're in the same time zone, and depending on so that's always interesting to know a little more about people. And talking about knowing a little more, before we jump into the questions, could you tell us some more? Who is Colleen?
Yeah, my name's Colleen Johnson. I like you said, I live in Denver, Colorado. I am the CEO of prokanban.org, and I've been working in IT for a little over 20 years, and about half of that time focused on agile practices, whether it's working to help teach and implement Scrum or Kanban at the team or portfolio level. And I've got 3 kiddos that when I'm not doing agile things, I'm usually driving them places. They are
being what I call sometimes a taxi resource. Sometimes.
Absolutely. Yep.
So that means that they're still underage or whatever that we call that.
Yes.
So that they're still depending on you to walk to be driven around. I'm already at the stage where I have 2 of my 3 who actually can drive a car, and sometimes they even drive number 3 around. So when she wants to go out, so we're literally at a different phase in life there. I can tell you.
I'm ready for that. We're tipping that. My oldest just turned 16, so he'll get his license at the end of this month, and I'm excited for that, but I'm also very nervous for that.
That's a little bit what I wanted to say. It gives a lot more freedom, but it gives a lot more anxiety in return.
Yeah. You can feel that coming.
Well, I don't want to talk too much negative, but I did already receive a phone call like, hey, Dad, we had a little accident. It was not a big problem, but it was like, okay. But I've always had so in Belgium, you have to be 18 before you can drive. So that's a little bit different. And I always had the idea that I've also learned my partner how to drive. It's a bad idea, never do that, but okay, that's what I did so many years ago. But I've always said in that moment that I expect people to have a small accident in like the first year. It's part of learning how to drive. It just hopes that there is no people get hurt, and preferable the car is not in too bad shape afterwards.
Yeah.
Which was the case in all our cases here. So yeah.
Oh, good. That's good.
But it's part of life indeed. It's interesting to have that. So we jumped already a lot in that kind of thing, which is exactly what I like as a kind of introduction. I really love that you add both the professional and the private part, because I do believe that, well, we are fully human in the sense that with all big parts, all parts of life in a way.
Yeah.
And that brings it, well, that brings also the connection. So let's jump into that first question. What question do you think? Oh, wait, where is that? That's the last question. That's not something I should ask first. So the first question is, what's something people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Yeah, it's a fun question. I really like it.
Thank you.
Something a lot of people don't know about me. I grew up in a very small town with 125 people in it. So
Wow.
yeah, everybody's in your business. You can't really get in trouble. And
Or if you get in trouble, everybody knows.
Right. Yeah. As soon as you get in trouble, you get back to your parents before you get home. But my folks were from New York City, so they moved to the mountains in Colorado in the 70s, and I think, the juxtaposition of them being from a big city and then moving into this really small mountain town, they knew that would be maybe limiting in opportunities for us in some ways. And so I feel like one thing that was maybe really different about growing up in such a small town is that they really encouraged us, my sister and I, to go try new things constantly, right? And so I don't know, I was like a professional dabbler even way back then. Maybe too many things I was trying out, but I got to do sports, and we raised sheep and we raised rabbits, and I took art classes, I took tennis lessons, I took, and it was, I think, really an important part of who I am now, in the sense of always being willing to go try something new, right? And it's kind of this mentality, I think, of like, I don't know, how will we know if we don't go try? And I think I got that from growing up in that environment and with parents that were very willing to let us go try something different, right? I think they just kept a very open mind of, you want to try clarinet, go play the clarinet. Like, you want to raise sheep, let's get some sheep. So we just experimented a lot, I guess. And I think that has carried forward with me from a professional career perspective, and jumping around and trying a lot of different things out.
So that is really nice, because when you originally said you talked about the sheep, I was thinking, yeah, okay, your parents wanted to do that. But now I'm hearing like, oh, it was probably an idea from one of the children. Like children, well, typically at home, people like, can I have a cat? Can I have a dog or a cavia or whatever? And it's like, no, it's a small town. There's probably a lot of land around. So let's have sheep, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting, and I forget sometimes like how lucky I am to have had that opportunity to do a lot of weird things.
And was there any specific reason why your parents moved from New York to a small town? Because I can imagine it's almost like a culture shock for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were just kind of done with city life and were looking to slow down the pace of what they had been used to, and wanted to raise us in a different kind of environment. And so they picked a very small town in the mountains here, and they're still there. So they must have they chose well, because they never left.
Yeah, it's interesting, like 120 people, 125 people. It's like, I think many people have worked in companies much bigger than that.
Right. I know, we joke a lot that my mother painted the sign that you see when you come into town, and we always joke with her that she never really updated the number of people that live there after my sister and I moved away. So we're like, the number should be going down.
That's interesting. Well, maybe at the same time some babies were born or whatever. Indeed, it's a number that should move a little bit.
Yeah.
on a year-to-year basis, probably. Yeah, and that with 125, it's still possible to count, I would say. With a large city, there's probably now all these computer systems that can count that, but I think in the old days might not have been exact numbers. How many people do we actually have in a time?
Yeah.
But with your time, that was actually possible. So and could you? So you already said a little bit about the sheep and everything. Could you give some examples about how it influenced you? You already talked about I can try new stuff. Could you give examples of that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think like most people, I didn't go to school for Agile. I didn't even really go to school for technology. I actually went to school for journalism, and kind of fell into an opportunity where I started doing some software testing in college to help to help pay for college. And I was working nights and weekends and learning all about software kind of as I was trying to get my journalism degree. And I think just a willingness like to go try those new things out and to explore different opportunities like that gave me a foot in the door before I even had finished college to be able to go
Mhm.
explore more tech company, working with tech companies and what the roles would be inside of tech companies, and starting to figure out like, oh, is this something I want to pursue, or what does a lane or opportunity for me look like in this industry? And I think it came from that, right? Just a lot of trying different things out and trying different roles, different, exploring. Yeah, I tried coding. I'm not a good coder,
Mhm.
but it was also in C++ because I'm old. And so things like,
Which is not the most easy language. Let's put it that way. My
no,
son actually has to learn it still today at university, so it's not in that sense. It's of many ages. Um, you said a few things I wanted to ask some more about, because when I hear a small city and then I hear, well, you were interested in moving somehow into tech. Was there a lot of tech in that small company, in that small country, a city? Sorry. Or how did you actually discover tech at that point?
yeah, there was not a lot of tech in the city. I worked in bars mostly growing, in high school. I was working in the kitchen in some different restaurants in the area, but there wasn't a lot of tech. There was one small company, and I knew the family because they lived up near where I lived as well, and they had started a tech startup that was processing mortgage applications for the government. And so it would
Hmm.
process an online mortgage application and send it through to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and you would get your response back immediately on whether or not you were approved to get a mortgage. This was 1998. So nothing like that really existed yet. And a lot of the testing effort for it was very manual, right? We had a book of test cases, like a spiral bound notebook. We would have to hand code in these mortgage applications and then print them out and sit there with a highlighter and go, did this one match this one? Did this one match this one? So very low tech, but I think gave me an opportunity to see the environment, see the process. And, if you fast forward to now, I think a lot of people in the agile space come from testing backgrounds, because I think we're often
Hmm.
at the end of broken process in a testing role. We see a lot of
Oh
like
yeah.
everything rolls downhill to the testers at the end. And I think that's where you start to see a lot of passion for fixing the way that we do it.
I recognize that, and I can imagine. Well, I asked about tech in a small city. Of course, if there is a startup in that city or people who live close, then you might. Well, what can you do if you want to get out of the bars in a way that's like, okay, maybe I'll try that one. That can I can imagine. There was another thing that you said that I found really interesting. You said I wasn't really trained for agile, but then you also said I was trained for journalism, and I've worked at a media company some years ago, and what I've learned there is that from all the customers I worked with, if you talk with journalists, these are the ones who do understand regular updates very well, because basically you have to have a newspaper every day. You have to have a journal or whatever on television, whatever. You have to have something out every day, whatever happens. And I've seen it also with websites. I've seen literally people write, there is a huge thing happening. I don't know, some king died, so they publish very quickly on the website, blah blah blah, died today. No article, nothing, no photos, just because they want to push out. We want to be the first. You saw it first with us. And
Yeah.
while it's published, someone searches for a picture, someone writes a text. Okay, if it's famous people, they have that text written already. spoiler alert, they have that on many famous people. But for many different things, they're really used to publishing multiple time a day, looking at statistics, and based on, okay, that's an article that worked best on the website, so that's going to be published in. So I do think maybe you weren't trained for agile, but you were trained on some of these things, because I do think journalists somehow learn that. Do you agree on that, or how do you feel about
Yeah,
it?
I never thought about it from that perspective, but I think that that's a great point. It is really fast feedback loops and quick cycles of getting something out quickly and getting that feedback and folding it into what you're going to do next, whether that's readership, like you said, or clicks these days. And so I think that there are some parallels there. I think the other place I often go to when I think about what I went to school for versus what I do now is just the power of asking good questions. And we hear that a lot from a coaching perspective of asking questions and helping the team get there, whatever there is on their own. And I think having a kind of inquisitive mind helps with those things too, because it gets us to have conversations where we're not telling the team what to go do, or we're not directing, right? We're really there as a guide to help them uncover better ways of working on their own.
And sometimes I've seen a situation not so long ago in a company where we were asking questions, and still people felt like, you're judging us, you're still doing. How do you deal with that situations? Do you have ever encountered that when you do ask a question really from you want to learn and want to see, okay, how can we help people, that people still feel like, I'm probably my feeling is it's mostly because of other events that happened previously in these people's life. Did you ever encounter that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I think kind of my my career journey here and what brought me into the world of Kanban, data was a big part of what got me so excited about Kanban. And when I think about, that particular part, right, I think a lot of the questions that we ask can put people on the defensive, right? It makes people feel like you're singling them out, or you're challenging whether or not they've been working or whether or not they've been productive for the day. And I think that's where, when I started to learn more about flow metrics and learn more about the data side of Kanban and how you could pull that in for a Scrum team, I got really excited, because I think it takes some of the hard part of that conversation out of the equation, because then we're just talking about data. And I can ask you a question about whether or not maybe a story needs split, or maybe we need to pair on it, or maybe we need to have a conversation about why that story is stuck based on the fact that it's been in progress for too long. So I can use things like work item age as a way to drive that conversation, instead of saying, hey, how come you've been working on this for 4 days, right? Which is going to make everybody go, well, screw you. I've been busy. I've been trying, right? Or I got pulled off on something else. But I think starting to pull data into those conversations really grounds it in reality and removes any maybe that initial reaction of feeling like you're getting singled out with some of the questions you might be asking.
Interesting. I really like that answer. At the same time, I've seen also people say, well, why are you checking on me? Why are you checking the data? No, I'm checking the data and using that as a question. But yeah, I think we've all seen some of these things. Okay, let's move to the next question. So if you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you? Or basically, was there anything you were destined to become when you were young?
Oh, well, it's funny. My mom is a total pack rat. And when my kids started into schools, she had saved all these papers of registration for me for kindergarten. And she had on the list of the thing, it was like a note to the teacher about what do we need to know about Colleen in the classroom. And my mom had said, she gets very excited and likes to talk a lot and has a hard time sometimes containing her emotions. And we all had a good laugh at it. So I was like, well, nothing's actually changed at all. That's all still very, very much who I am. And so, I think, as we were just talking about with the journalism thing, I think I probably would have pursued some kind of a career in either writing or reporting. And, I still have a lot of passion around that industry. I think it it unfortunately is, we can go down a whole rabbit hole, but I think it's kind of unfortunate that at least in American media, so much of it is driven by advertising money. And so the news that you get is often very filtered by the media, who's paying for advertising on that media channel. And that was
And it's
something
like
I
you
was
said
very
earlier, it's driven by clicks, and about the more clicks you have, the more advertising you have. So let's write something that is more polarizing because that gets us more clicks. And then
Right. And is that really the most important news that we need to be reading? And I think that's where, it still is a passion of mine to really try to seek out.
just to understand a little bit, do you have any idea when that passion for journalism was created? Because I assume that's not just at what the moment that you studied that. Was that a long-term dream?
Yeah, I guess I always just really enjoyed writing, and writing as a form of educating and trying to get people to think about things differently. I was on the newspaper staff in high school and in college, and loved trying to write some thought-provoking articles that made people go, wait, like, and it was funny. I had a boss at another testing role company who said, as I started to venture into the world of public speaking, he said, if you're not pissing people off, you're not saying anything. And I always think about that with writing and with speaking these days, right? I mean, you can get up there and tell a story and we can have a nice conversation, but if somebody isn't walking away either excited or agitated, did you say anything that's really different than all the other things that are out there? And so I think about that from a writing perspective, and have carried that forward into public speaking in my career now.
Well, yeah, at the same, I like the idea because I do think indeed, if you want to trigger people and want to think, I love it. At the same time, I do think sometimes in your country, there are some people who take it to the next level that only try to piss people off. And that might
Right.
not be always the good part about it.
Maybe there's like a way to respectfully piss people off.
Exactly.
Wait a minute, I haven't thought about it from this perspective.
It should be about the ideas and not so much about unrespectful to the people or to your audience or whatever. Yeah, that's I think that's a great addition to that part. I think that thanks for adding that, because I think it's really important to mention that. And of course, if you then, you talked about public speaking. Again, if you talk about that letter, that note from your mother, she likes to talk, then definitely there was already in there.
Yeah.
And did you in that sense, I'm interested, did you, for example, like speaking things in school, like doing, because I know that these days, or at least in Belgium, there's a lot more of that in schools, but when I was younger, there were some things, but there wasn't, not many people liked it. So did you like that when you were younger?
I think I did like it. I did student government, and I was like student class president and student body president my senior year of high school. And so that kind of,
that's not just presentations in school, but that's really keynoting. That's
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think I always liked it, but I feel like the journey for public speaking for me has been a really interesting one, because I think especially growing up and excuse me, and learning about public speaking, a lot of times we're told you have to memorize your speech and hold very still and be very formal. And I had an opportunity to take some classes about, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, that were really, really important to me. And I think how I approach public speaking now, which is not trying to be perfect, not trying to be super polished, but being more genuine, and storytelling. But for me, it's like, I talk with my hands a lot. I swear a lot. That's all me. That's like part of the package deal here that you're going to get if I'm on stage. And but I like that. I like that angle. And I feel like people walk away from hearing a presentation that I'll give feeling like they heard that from me, right? It wasn't a pre-recorded thing. It wasn't reading from a script. I told you a story. We had a conversation, like you said at the beginning, it could have been at a bar. It could have been in front of 400 people. But you're going to hear the same Colleen come through that story in both of those scenarios. And I think that's been a big shift from maybe where I started out public speaking, which was trying to memorize everything, trying to hold very still. I had somebody tell me my hands were distracting. And so for the longest time, I would keep like a Sharpie or an index card in my hand to try not to move. And I had somebody say, why are you always holding a pen when you talk? And I was like, I'm trying not to flail. But when I took these classes, they called it Go Big and Then Go Home. It was through a place called Decker Communications. And I really loved that concept, right? Of it's part of your personality, right? To talk with your hands or to walk around or to swear, right? Whatever it is, it's you. And that's what people want to hear.
Yeah, I remember doing a conversation or a presentation together with a friend at a pretty large conference in Belgium, where they were taping it. So they were actually with a camera, and then the way I work, and especially the way we prepared it with the two of us, like we would swap places on the stage and we would show stuff and we would interact with each other. And when we arrived there, the cameraman was like, "Yeah, you have to stand still." I was like, "No, we're not going to do that.
Not gonna work.
This is not going to work. This is not how I am. This is not how Jeff is. This is not how we're in." And so, yeah, it's like, sorry, then you take a large angle or whatever that you see everything, but this is not going to work. I did try to take it a little bit into account, but not like I'm not going to stand still. That would so not be me. And yeah, it wasn't. Oops, and now we've lost the connection, so I do hope you come back. And you're back. Not sure what happened. So yeah, I was explaining the situation with it was not me, so I said let's not move too much around. I think let's move around in a logical way, but yeah, try it. I really like your story that you say you got some feedback, you tried it, and at some point you what I'm hearing is it didn't feel again normal to who you are, and you said, okay, I'll change back to who I am.
Yeah.
That's and in a way, I think it's also lovely that I get some feedback. I try to take the feedback because maybe it can improve my skills. But if it's not for me, let's move on and let's do something else. I think that is a very nice story, and I think it's really important for many people to hear it because feedback is a gift, but that doesn't mean you have to unpack everything and believe everything. It's good to have feedback, but it's also important to realize, like, okay, which part of the feedback is about the other person and which part is actually hurting me and or it's not helping me at that level. That's thanks for sharing that story, because not many people, well, I think everybody, when you start out with presenting, we compare ourselves to people who've been maybe doing that all the time, who have been doing it for years or ages. And it's like, yeah, but does that mean how comfortable am I? I need to find my way of doing it. And both of us were not Steve Jobs, and he might do it in a certain way. We might like it or dislike it, but we are not that person or whoever we want to admire to. So that's thanks for sharing that. Let's move to the next question, which is what is your biggest challenge? And I would say the biggest challenge right now, and also the biggest challenge, of course, that you want to share, because there might always be bigger stuff, but yet you don't want to have out on the internet. So what is something you want to share about?
Well, I mean, I think it's maybe something we all struggle with, but maybe a surprise for some people. But given the field that I'm in around Kanban and Kanban coaching and helping organizations limit the amount of work they have in progress, I have a very hard time saying no. It kind of all ties back to the story about, opportunities and trying all these new things. But I get really excited about new things like that. And I have a hard time saying no to new projects or to new opportunities or new things coming up. And so it's I guess one of those things that you would expect somebody in our role to be good at, because we're coaching other organizations on how to limit WIP and bring focus to the work that they're doing. But I'm not inherently or naturally good at that myself. And so it takes a lot of discipline for me. And, thinking about...
It's interesting that you say because of who I am or because of what I do, people might consider that not normal. I would actually consider it very normal because I see a lot of people, we're going for things that are actually helping us. And so that is that in that sense, it is what you need to learn and want to become better. And I assume you're already a lot better than it than 10 years ago or whatever. And it's still a struggle.
Yeah.
And that is why you see it makes so much difference and you try to teach other people, but that doesn't mean that you're a natural, because my feeling at least is people who are very natural at some stuff will not even see the value in teaching it, because I was like, yeah, but that's just how people, yeah,
Yeah. I could
it's
see
a
that
little
too.
bit.
That makes sense.
And I interrupted you, so was there something else that you wanted to add at that point?
Well, I was gonna tie it back again to writing for me, and I've been trying to get a book out the door and over the finish line here for what feels like
Mm,
forever. I had an awesome opportunity at the end of last year to take Johanna Rothman's writing workshop. And a big part of her workshop was about focus, right? And clearing time and space to not do anything else except write. And I've created some better habits for myself around that of doing exactly that. Not writing on my laptop or like on my work laptop is a big part of that for me, because I know it's full of distractions. It's got Slack messages and all these things popping up all the time, and chats happening that are going to distract me from what I'm trying to do. And so I think that's been a big area of focus for me going into 2024, is how to keep that pattern and carve out the time to do those kind of things where I know I need to bring that focus into what I'm doing.
yeah, and I think, well, I've been looking at Johanna's workshop for a couple of years now. I was actually thinking right now, well, the main reason why I didn't do it is because of focus and because of not starting anything else.
Yep.
I think I literally, but I don't think I said it at the beginning of, I don't know when I said it, but one of the times she gave the workshop, I answered that exactly to Johanna, like, I would love to join. I know I will learn so much, but right now I can't put it in, because otherwise I would have to actually start writing something and do work on that, and that's not part of my priorities right now. And yeah, I've co-written an article with her, and well, we worked on other kind of things sometimes together. She was also on the show already. It's a wonderful woman, and
Yeah.
indeed
She's amazing.
every time that you have, or I'll speak for myself, every time I have an interaction with her, I learn so much about her, and about the whole world. And yeah, she's really that good indeed, like you say, to keep saying, okay, but wait a minute, what's your focus? And so I
Right.
do get that question also sometimes when I do ask a question to her about whatever project. She's like, okay, not my priority, or where. So it's really interesting to hear that kind of thing there. um, and so we talked, so I just asked the first part of that question, what is your biggest challenge, but the last part is, why is it a good thing for you? Could you say something about that?
Yeah, I think you started down this path too, but I think it's good for me because it does help me teach and coach teams of other ways to explore when you are struggling to limit your WIP. I think if it's like you said, if we struggle with something, then we can relate when a team struggles with it or when an organization struggles with it. It's going to help us have a better conversation with them about ways to mitigate that, but we can also just relate to where they're at. I think I've worked in organizations where I think leaders tend to get kind of a bad rap for being the ones that are constantly reprioritizing new work or constantly changing focus for the teams or focus for strategic priorities, whatever the case may be. But I think if you can also start from a place of understanding, like maybe they're trying to pivot quickly and the rest of the organization isn't structured in a way that's allowing them to switch directions that easily, then all of those things are going to help us relate more to where they're coming from and try to be curious, right, about what's driving those patterns and those behaviors so that we can help coach them in the right direction.
I think that's a really wonderful thing, is like, I've worked and I've coached with numbers of CEOs and C-level people. And many times indeed, these people are, well, not really connected with the people below for multiple kind of reasons, and they have a completely different kind of challenges. And I see, in what I would say, not enough respect is maybe the wrong word, because people do have a respect for these people, but they don't always understand the challenges that people have high up. And the bigger the company, the well, we can say, okay, Joe, go and see and talk with your teams, but if you have 10,000 people below you, you can't just go and see everyone. So
Right.
you need to also to make priorities and learn some things. And you need to find ways how could people actually can talk to you, can say no to you, and also these kind of things. So I think it's important for you to bring up. I really like the fact that you want to say they have different kind of troubles, and they actually try to to move a ship from change a course on it. And
Right.
it's a different thing on if it's a speedboat, if it's a cruise ship, then changing direction is a lot bigger and a lot harder
Right.
in one of these cases.
Yeah.
And
And
that's yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, and I think, it's easy to feel like, oh, they're just changing direction, or they're asking us to pick up something else, or we can never get anything finished because the priorities keep getting changed. But like you said, what's driving that pattern at the top then, and how do we help bring focus at that level, right? Creating visibility and transparency into how the work connects to those strategic goals. And I think for a lot of leaders, there's a cost trade-off there that's hard to see. I think a lot of times too, it's like, oh, well, we have to switch gears and go work on this new thing because this is urgent, or there's, a regulatory change. Something's happening, right? That's causing us to go switch to something else. But how much have we invested in building something that we're now going to pause or not ship? And some of those conversations, I think, can get kind of hidden, especially in tools, right? We bury all of the things we need to know and see in Jira. But then how are you going to talk to an executive about the trade-offs of pausing work? And so I think, tying that back to focus and sometimes struggling with it myself and saying no to new things. I mean, all of that is going to make me hopefully ask better questions in any organization and at any level around what's driving that shift for them, or that, that churn. Like, where is that coming from for you? And how do we help have a better, more data-driven conversation around the trade-offs of starting new work?
I really like that. And well, especially you talked about the tools. It's well, I one of the things I dislike about electronic tools is that it's an unlimited list. You can just add a gazillion things to that. So limiting work in progress in a physical Kanban board, when the board is full, the board is full, and it's like, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
feature, that's not a bug. With remote teams, I fully am a big believer in these tools. They can really help for remote teams, and especially if you have multiple companies working together, it can really bring value if you can sync these kind of things. But you still need to think about how can we limit the number of things that we're working on. Let's not work on 5 goals at the same time with a small team. What is our top priority? And okay, how can we get that out of the door and focus there? Yeah, that is an important part. So thanks for bringing that. And indeed, it's a lot of conversations with these people who have a lot of stuff on their mind as well. So that's
Right.
that's
I know. I
another.
think I worked in one organization where we had a physical portfolio level Kanban board, and there were cards on that board all the way down to the floor. So like you said, very exceeding our WIP limit and exceeding our physical space to even manage the amount of work that they were trying to juggle at once.
I worked once in a company. I'm not going to say the name, but I walked in. It was like, yeah, this is our kind of war room, and they literally had all walls completely filled with Kanban boards. Okay, this is from multiple teams that use that room, but I remember walking around and looking at just like more than 1,000 post-its on all the walls together. It was like, how do you even know, and how do you know which priorities were or colorated
Yeah.
or yeah combined? And it's like, wow, I think I just like the first few minutes that I was in that room, I was just like, so much stuff going on. Again, it was multiple teams. It's yeah, so I don't know how many. There was actually a lot of teams working there, so in that sense I could understand. But it still was like, okay, this is many things that I'm working on. How do I even, if I want to have as a bigger manager, jump in and see how much stuff is moving? I can't know. If I walk to a team room and if I see one board, I immediately know what has changed from yesterday, or if I visit it regularly. But in that room, for me, even as a coach, it was hard to see what our things are moving. So there, so that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I think it's
Okay,
interesting to talk
yeah, go
about
ahead.
limiting WIP too. I think for some people it can feel like, why are you telling me I need to work on less? Like I'm fully capable of pulling more things in, or, I'll hear folks say like, I'm pretty good at multitasking. But there's all this other unintended cost of having too much work in progress. And what you were just talking about, I think, is one that we forget sometimes. And that is the ability to make good, quick decisions gets diluted the more I have to pick from, right? What am I going to work on today? What's the next thing to pull? What's the highest priority to test? If there's 50 things on that wall, it's going to be much harder to figure that out than if there's 5. And so that decision fatigue piece of it, I think, is real, but it's easy to ignore, especially like you said, in a digital tool.
Yeah, I'm trying to come up with the name. Oh yeah, I've heard it once. I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger who said that if I so the famous actor and then governor, and what else did he do? I heard him once say in an interview, for my day-to-day work, I'm happy if I can. So when I get up in the morning, I write a list of 2 or 3 things I want to do, and if I can do one of these every day, I'm happy. And because of all the other things that are on my plate and other unforeseen work, but I want to do one thing that I planned in the morning and make sure that it's finished by the next day. Because if I
I love
can do that 200 days in a row, that's actually really, really good. And I was like, just one, okay. now
that.
now we're talking about limiting WIP. And of course he did a gazillion other things and unforeseen, and there's meetings and whatever, but one thing that he wants to make sure that is finished every day. And I was like, okay, that's really a powerful message.
It
Um,
is.
it's yeah, and it's if a person at that kind of level, okay, he has much more control. Well, no, I'm not even sure. I was about to say he has much more control over his agenda, but probably as a governor, he totally didn't have any control over his agenda.
Right. True.
Because that was when he was in office at that moment. Okay, let's move to that next one. I'm really interested because, well, I say that many times, but I really feel also the passion, the drive. Do you know where your passion is coming from? You talked in the beginning already about curiosity that was kind of stimulated with your parents. Is there anything else where you say, this is where I learned that passion, that drive, or is that always been in you?
I think it has always been in me, but maybe it has shifted over the last couple of years to be less about my individual accomplishments and more about how I can help other people. And I think, when we founded Pro Kanban in 2020, and we had a colleague from a mentor basically say to us, if you don't fix your trainer community, you're going to end up with a diversity problem that you can't fix, right? And I was like, okay, well, we have control of this situation. What's something we can do right now that's going to help bring more people in underserved communities and people who maybe feel like they don't have the opportunity to step into this right now, whether it's because of cost or because of changing jobs or maybe just re-entering the workforce. How do we create opportunity here? And so we launched the Pro Kanban Women in Scholarship Program in 2021 and created an avenue for women to apply and work in small cohorts to become Pro Kanban trainers. And, I think at first it felt very like we had a goal, we were trying to achieve something. I was trying to make bring more diversity into our trainer community. But what I found in working with that group, brought me so much new energy in terms of mentoring a bunch of different ladies from all over the world, getting to know them, getting to know what drove each of them to this point where they were interested in either adding skills to their coaching or bringing skills and training back into their organizations. But what it really made me realize is I think a lot of what drives me right now is trying to create those opportunities for other people. Like, how can I be a catalyst to help you do what you want to do next, right? Whether that's be a better coach or learn something about flow metrics or become a trainer, whatever it is, right? And I think it's been maybe just a shift for me because I've had a lot of opportunity to do a lot of the things I wanted to do in my career, and I want to help other people do that too. It gets me excited, and I think it's these questions are fun because they're not about Agile necessarily. They're not, we're not talking about what's your recommendation to make stand up better. You're interviewing people to get to know them, and I think that's been a big part of all these opportunities that we're trying to create, is getting to know the people that are showing up and doing something with them.
Interesting that you say it has nothing to do with Agile because, well, depending again on how you look at it, for me, Agile is also about creating a better world and being in many ways creating a more humane world. Development also, like, okay, in extreme programming there was in the beginning was a 40-hour work week. I don't know, Canback rechanged that a few times. So I'm not sure what was the latest version, but for me, that I recognized that a lot, like 20 years ago. Like, okay, this is also about making it sustainable for everybody, that we can keep working, and that part for me, I recognize in a lot of what you're saying. It's different, but at the same time, it's also like, okay, let's look at another part of the world. How can we make their world better? I assume you didn't say it, but I kind of heard it in a way that when you talk to these people from different parts of the world, you also learn what might work better or different in the Agile world with them. Because maybe, I don't know, a stand-up in certain country might feel certain unculture fit or something like that. Is there anything that you've learned that you could talk about?
Yeah, so I had an amazing opportunity to speak at Agile in Africa last October, and that was in Accra in Ghana. And it was exactly what you just described, right? We learned a lot about cultural context and why it matters so much in communities like that, where you can't just come in and roll Scrum out, right? We can't just come with a set of practices and say, this is what you need to do to be successful. There is a lot of understanding the culture that matters there. And I think we're going to continue to see that. All the changes that COVID brought, I think, also introduced a new layer of complexity around whether or not we're working from home and what's going on in your home that's different from my home. Or are you in a rural area? Are you in a city? Like access questions, right? All these different things, I think, contribute to how Agile, like how does Agile mean something to the people that we're working with? And so I think that cultural context really matters, and educating ourselves so that we're aware of those things before we go in becomes equally as important, right? It's never going to be a one size fits all kind of coaching that we're doing, or I hope that it's not, because I think you want to go in and get to know the people and get to understand that local context before you try to make any recommendations on what needs to change.
I really like that because it's indeed the cultures. Well, I'm working these days with people who are in Ukraine, which is, well, my challenge is how could I create psychological safety in people who are physically not safe, because it's like that's their situation. So in a way, some people sometimes, I've had a colleague once say to me, I come to work because it distracts me from the war, which is, it's a reality at some point. And so it brings all different kind of things, and just trying to understand the difference and everything that is there. I've heard a person in Africa, and I'm trying to come up with the name, I don't know anymore, but it was like, okay, for us it's also about safety for the women, for example, in our lives, and because of everything, because of there's much more violence against women, it was in their city. Other people were talking about Agile helping out to help with governance that were not really working in a good way, where there's a lot of bribery and lots of other stuff going on. So how could we deal with some of that? So that brings a whole different kind of dynamic to different kind of things. So thanks for bringing that up, because I can definitely see how that can drive you and how that can inspire you at a whole different kind of level. At the same time, I also want to go a little bit into the question behind, is there because you talked about how that shifted. Do you see something where, if you want to share, of course, when you were younger, but that you were already caring about people at that kind of level, or is that something you've learned along the way?
No, I think it's probably something that I've always carried with me. You know, my parents, my friends, my family would probably all tell you that I've got a bit of a bleeding heart. One of my dad's favorite stories, I think I was like 5 or 6, and we watched the Super Bowl, which is about to happen this weekend here in the States. And he said at the end of the game, I was that I was hysterical crying. And he was like, "Why are you crying about the football game?" And I was like, "I just feel so bad for the team that lost. Like, look how sad they are." And so I
Why
think
can't we just both win?
I know, right? I think I've always been a big feeler, in the sense that I like that connection. And I think, like what the story you were just telling about working with folks in the Ukraine, I think maybe that's a good part that came out of COVID, is that I think hopefully it's made us all realize that we don't know what's going on the other end of that camera, right? I don't know where you are and what's happening for you and your family right now, where I think when we were in an office, you could feel more of that around each other. You could tell if somebody was stressed or somebody hadn't slept or somebody has to go pick up a sick kid, but it gets a little muted, I think, when we're always on Zoom, because it's very easy for me to have maybe the whole world falling down around me, but I can put up a good front here in this one little box where I'm talking to you and maybe painting a rosier picture than what the reality is. And so I think hopefully we're all learning that we'll never know what's going on for other people, and hopefully that we give them a little bit of grace because of that.
It's interesting that you say that, because I fully recognize that the whole picture, and then I've seen people actually saying, "Oh, I want to make sure that there is a virtual background. You don't see my real background," and people feel almost annoyed when a cat or a child walks in. Where actually most people on the other end, like, this is actually bringing more human. And exactly that last part, I sometimes felt that when I had a camera into people's home, that it was a different kind of connection, and I think it was different for different kind of people. So I do think that there is a different kind of connection, and I fully agree. I do miss that other part from being in the office with certain things, like, for example, me not possible to go to Ukraine. That's definitely something I do miss. That's where, it's for logical reasons. It's not possible right now. But at the same time, I do sometimes see indeed in people some kind of the connection. So just like, okay, I might know you have a cat or a dog, but if your cat walks into your camera, I might actually see it. And it brings, for me, depending if you're a cat or a dog person, it gives some extra connection for me. You see that as well, or you're not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like what we were talking about with the public speaking too, right? It's creating a more complete picture of the person that you're talking to, because it's real. It's funny you say that about like kids and backgrounds. I saw somebody repost an interview I had done kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and my desk here was turned this way. In the recording, I noticed that there were just Legos all over the carpet behind me. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't clean that up before I went on camera. But it was probably that, right? I'm sure I was trying to keep a kiddo busy before I hopped on. And that was the reality of, what my home looked like that day. And so I do think that does help build connection.
Yeah, I do think, and for example, so my partner works in shifts, so sometimes she leaves or comes in when I'm busy working, and I do try to say hello to her, and sometimes there's meetings like I say, like, okay, let's not jump in because it's already a tense meeting. But there's others, like I say, okay, I can just say hi, have a kiss, or just say hi a little, because for me it feels like it brings that next part of it. But it is always a kind of conscious thing, like, okay, is this a meeting where people can come in or not? They do ask that, which is logical. And yeah, it's a different part of the world that we don't always see. And that's a different kind of thing to bring that. So thanks for sharing, because indeed, and I really like your example of shifting the camera and shifting your room in a way that's I think a lot of us, we've looked at how ready is our home office, or our yeah, ready for that kind of stuff. Because well, I've built a house a couple of years before COVID, and that my home office was actually prepared with the idea I want to work more from home from time to time. In that way, I was ready for it. But I've seen so many people, like, we all had to learn all at the same time. Okay, how does that work here? And the tools, luckily for us, kept improving. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I had people like, yeah, but I'm working at my kitchen because my family is there, and my mother's like, okay, how does that work? Because now we have, like, I might have been remote working, but now we had 5 people working from home, or 4 most of the time. So how does that even work? How do we do that? Is our internet connection good enough for that? And how do we make sure that we don't have too much noise from each other and that kind of stuff? That's
Yeah, we had the same challenges. We have, I mean, it's an old house that we live in here in the city, and there's one office. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we were sitting side by side, my husband and I. He also is in technology and works from home, and so we were trying to share that office, and it was like somebody was always getting booted to the kitchen if your meeting went 2 minutes late over the other person's meeting. And we definitely had to get creative with space. But I think what you said is very, very true. I think it is fun to see that part of other people's lives. It does feel like you get to know them more.
And I think we also learned a lot about that in that sense. Okay, let's move to that next one. And we already talked a little bit about some of the challenges, but what is the opposite? What is your biggest achievement so far? And maybe before that, I want to go to the question below, because basically this is your moment to brag. And so, is that easy for you to brag?
Well, yeah, I think it's easy to brag. I feel like, I mean, I've put in the work. I'm proud of the work that I've done. None of it has been easy. And I think, I guess my answer to the accomplishments are kind of twofold. I think I've Pro Kanban's kind of the second startup that I've built and launched. The first was a software company called Scatterspoke. And both of those startups and businesses have made it so that I can work for myself, essentially, and be able to be a more present parent and a more present partner in my family life. And all of that, to me, is kind of comes full circle, right? Like I found a lane in the space that I was working in that I felt like was important to me and brought passion and things I was excited about teaching people Kanban and creating these opportunities for people who want to become trainers all over the world to be able to help teach Kanban in their local communities. But I think finding that balance for myself, like you were talking about, right, of sustainable pace and sustainable like work-life balance, has also been really important to me in getting to this point, because I've also, I've spent other points in my career burning myself out, trying to do coaching work or consulting work and being very stressed out and not being a present parent and a present partner. And so, I'm really excited about what we've built from a community perspective, but also what that means for me personally, and being able to kind of like bridge that gap between what I'm working on and then what I bring home, or maybe in this case, what I don't bring home. I've had plenty of.
Yeah, I really like that last addition that you add to that, because it's not just about what you bring home, but also, okay, what can I leave behind? You give the very nice example earlier on about, okay, if I want to write, let's not use the work laptop because I don't want to be in that space. And especially in your role, I can imagine that you're responsible for a lot of stuff, and so it's very easy to be busy all day and all night with that, and sometimes it is needed. But at the same time, okay, there is also the CEO, or at least the co-founder of your family in a way, so that there is also another important part. So how do we make sure that that's in balance, or at least enough in balance most of the time? So I really like that you mentioned the part about, yeah, how do we Yeah, it's not pure business, it's not pure family, it's somewhere in between, and I really like that as an achievement, because that's really hard, let's face it.
It
uh,
is.
I saw a meme last night about a couple talking about to their doctor about their first child, and they're proudly saying, "We're completely ready for this," and the doctor saying, "Yes, it's good to hear that," and then a text balloon on his head, thinking like, "No, you're not." And I was like, "Yeah." So many people, once you have some children, you recognize that these are all things you can't foresee, and at the same time, it keeps the struggle whatever we do. So if you are in a place where you think, hey, this is, and probably not all the time, every time, but it's most of the time under control, that feels like a big achievement. I
Well,
think.
and our kids are always watching. I mean, I think, we were talking at the beginning too about, you mentioned like having kids that are old enough to go drive around or to take care of themselves. And, I think it makes you acutely aware of how quick everything goes by with kids. Like the time goes by
Yeah.
really fast and then they're going to be out of the house. And it's like, what things do I hope I'm teaching them? It's probably not the stuff like that I'm lecturing them about or, if they're
Definitely not.
it's the stuff that we
The-
show them, and it's like, how do we show them how the life that we hope that they build for themselves too, where they can find some kind of balance and have the things that are important to them in life. And I hope I'm modeling that for my family.
yeah, they learn much more from our habits and what they see us doing than from the things that we're telling them. It's modeling. That's I really like that world. It's really modeling. I remember, so in Belgium we drive a lot on bicycles, not as much as in the Netherlands, but still. And I do remember when my kids started to drive the bicycle, I say, okay, for kids then it was very hip to put them helmets on and everything. I was like, but I've never driven the took a helmet on my head before that. But ever since, I said, okay, if I want my kids to wear that, I have to wear it all the time, every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, even if they don't see me leaving, I will wear it, because for whatever reason, they need to know that I'm doing that. I can't ask them not to do that and not do it myself. That just doesn't work. And I think that is part of raising children or raising people. Like, let's behave. And of course, I make mistakes,
Yeah.
and I think that's also part of, for me, raising children is also about, okay, I made a mistake. I fess up to my children, like, okay, that was, yeah, okay. I might have shouted or I might have reacted badly. That's not how a parent I want to be. But let's also, yeah, tell them, like, sometimes you make mistakes. Maybe it's because I haven't slept enough, or because whatever else, something triggered me. And there is a part of me of these things. And I think that modeling is so hard, but it's so important. I
Yeah.
think that's. I'm really happy that you talk. This is for me one of the great examples of a big achievement. So thanks for sharing that. I want to move to the next question, and I think, well, with many people, I look forward to this question. But I think with you working already as and with what you talked about before, the struggles and everything, what is a personal agility tip that you want to share?
Yeah. I get the question a lot of, do I have a personal Kanban board? And the answer is no, which I think surprises a lot of folks. The answer was no for me because I travel a lot. It's decreased, or, kind of ebbs and flows, but having the ability to have kind of my working list in front of me is important. And I work better on paper. So I got interested a few years ago in the concept of bullet journaling. And it's kind of funny because I think there's a lot of similarities between bullet journaling and personal Kanban. And one of my favorite tools in the bullet journaling concepts is that you kind of rewrite your to-do list every morning. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And
But
so if
wait. I want just to make sure I understand, because
yeah.
this is a new concept for me. When I'm hearing you have to rewrite it yourself, you also talked about limiting WIP. I can imagine if I have to rewrite my to-do list and that list is like 30 things, it's kind of forcing me to limit it because I might be too lazy to rewrite it every time. Is there that part in it, or do I read
Yeah.
something that this is not? Yeah.
Well, there's that part in it, but I think the other thing that's kind of the quiet driver, the hidden side effect there is also this concept. It's almost forcing you to pay attention to work item age in a kind of covert way, because if I put something on my list Monday and I don't get it done, I have to rewrite it Tuesday. And if I don't get it done Tuesday, I have to rewrite it Wednesday. And if I don't get it done Wednesday, I have to rewrite it Thursday. And so if it's Friday morning and I'm rewriting the same thing for 5 days this week, maybe I need to say, maybe this is the highest priority thing for me because I keep putting it on my list and not getting it done. Or maybe I'm not going to do this. Like maybe this isn't important anymore. So I'm going to stop writing it down because it's decreased in priority or it's decreased in importance to occupy my focus today. But I think it's easy to have, it's just like you were talking about with the tooling, right? It's easy to have this growing list of things. It's almost the same too as what you were talking about with Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? If our list is short and our goal is to get one thing done, if I have to rewrite the same things all week, at some point I have to have a reality check to say, maybe this isn't a priority right now, or maybe I'll come back to it later. But I think there's a lot of similar concepts from personal Kanban around limiting WIP and looking at how old are the things that are in your queue, and this concept of rewriting your to-do list every day.
I really like. I've never heard about it, but I really like that idea. And I noticed. Well, I do have a personal Kanban board, but on a tool based again because I'm traveling and all kind of stuff. But I also noticed that for in the weekend, for example, everything I want to do in that weekend, I just write on a post-it for the whole weekend. So typically tonight after this conversation, I'll probably start with my partner because we do plan our weekend. So it's going to be writing that kind of stuff. And then I don't rewrite it for the rest of the weekend. So I keep that. But indeed, it's if it's not done and these are typical things that I can only do in the weekend, then yes, I will rewrite it next weekend because that post-it, it will still be there, but I'm not going to start from the same thing from next. So in that sense, I recognize something. I really loved your idea also about, if things are moving, it reminds me of something that is in Getting Things Done, where they also had the concept of someday later. And that concept really helped me. It's like, if there's things that you ever want to do, I want to read a book on whatever, a different country, and then you keep doing it and postponing it. If you keep doing it for a long time, so maybe it's forget about it. Maybe let's post it somewhere else. If you want to keep it, put it somewhere back in your office or whatever, where you don't have to look at it on a day-to-day basis, because it drains. I don't know how it works for you, but it drains energy on me. If I have every day to see like, oh God, I didn't do it, and why didn't do it? And I know I'm not going to do it today, but I still feel bad that I didn't do it yesterday. Yeah, what's the sense of that?
Right. Yeah,
It
it's
just
like
makes me
that
feel bad.
same concept of just an infinitely growing backlog, right? It becomes just this dumping ground of things you might eventually want to do, but not the list that you want to have to come through every morning or every time that you are trying to figure out what your priorities are right now.
And that's really, I really like that idea. So bulleting journals. Could you say where you learned that? Is that something you picked up along the way? Is that something you learned from a specific technique, or because I've never heard of it?
Yeah, the technique is called bullet journal. And they have some online materials you can go pull from their website around the practices. I mean, people can get very elaborate with it. They have books even that walk you through how to doodle and color code your journal. I would say mine is much more simple. It's just the list for the day. And then I'll have some notes at the bottom, maybe from calls or things that I know I need to follow up on. Sometimes there's, I think the concept too around having one list, I think becomes important for me. It's like I might have stuff I have to do for work and stuff I have to do for the kids, and an idea of like, okay, at this time I need to drive somebody to practice or pick somebody up from dance or whatever this list looks like, but there's still only one of me. And so in previous parts of my life,
yes,
I used to have all these, a journal for work and a planner, a diary for home life and stuff stuck to the fridge. But I think the more we separate all those different lists, the easier it is to lose track of things. And so getting that all in one place has also been a big part of that.
Yeah, and what I've noticed is if I have too many lists, well, I might need the list of the lists. That's one thing. There might be, it will pop up in my head when I'm in the shower when I can't do anything about it, and I will forget what I need to buy in the store when I'm there. And so that's, it does, well, I do have some stuff, like, for example, the store, we do have a WhatsApp group in the family where just the children, everybody in the family, not just the children, but everybody in the family just puts in what they want me to order. So that is a separate list, but it's a list I look when I order. But other than that, I think the real to-do things are indeed in one place, because otherwise it doesn't work. It's yeah, I really like that concept. So I'll put links to that if I find it, and if I don't, I will ask you to put links in the show notes, because I really like the concept. And it's interesting to hear that there's a lot of things about it. I think the same can be said about personal Kanban, about getting things done, a lot of things. And again, it's not, for me, the way I look at these techniques and things, like, it's not that I will pick one thing and do it completely. No, I'll pick from all these ideas a little bit, and I'll use it and I'll mix it to my own. This is why, for me, I'm asking about personal agility, and it could be something completely different for everybody else. I on purposely don't send a definition what that means, personal agility, because it might mean different things for different people. So and yeah, I've learned again something new today. So thank you very much. Let's move to that next question. And we kind of already talked a little bit about remote work and how COVID came into that. So maybe switch a little bit before. Did you do some remote work before COVID, or was that really like moving or doing the first experience during COVID, or how?
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of remote work, and honestly, the tool Scatterspoke that we built it was for retrospectives for teams that were distributed, and so we had a strong focus pre-COVID on how to help distributed teams to make sure they were capturing everything from their retro and everything was in one place, and they had an opportunity to really compile all that data into something actionable. So my head was there, I guess, and I was headed that direction thought-wise, but I don't think I was ever really prepared for what we were talking about, which was having 5 people in this house all at the same time and still trying to work. And so we would.
You just said that your oldest was turning 16. So we're 24. So that was like 4 years ago. So 12 years old. So I guess that means. In Belgium, that would mean first year at a new kind of school, a high school system, with new friends that you've been there for a couple of months, and all of a sudden, boom, you have to do from home. Is that what happened?
Yeah, my oldest was in middle school during the pandemic. My daughter, in the middle, she was in elementary school still, and then we had a little one that was in daycare. That was suddenly home all the time. But you can't pop, he doesn't have
daycare. Okay, daycare also. Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, my kids were older, so I didn't think about that. Daycare. Wow. Okay, that's
yeah. And so we tried to create some structure so that we had structure for our day too, and we actually did a Kanban board for them. Because I think what would happen was they would plow through their coursework online as quickly as they could so that they could go play video games or go, have screen time. So we set up a Kanban board for the kids, and each kid had a swim lane. And in it was like, okay, is your schoolwork done? Is your bed made? Is your laundry put away? Is your, did you read for 20 minutes? Did you do some kind of art project? Did you go outside? Like, have you seen the sunlight today? So they had to get all of their cards each day moved from the to-do column into the done column before they could ask for any screen time or, any downtime. And it helped us because their list was in front of them. They knew exactly what they needed to do. And so it made it.
And I assume now this is the 2 oldest. I assume that the one in daycare didn't have his own list.
No, he did not. But the older 2 really, I think, did a great job of using that as a way to manage what they needed to do for the day. I feel like there's probably a little bit of psychology there too. Personalities. The oldest kiddo have all his stuff done and in the column by lunchtime every day, and into the done column so that he could do whatever he wanted for the afternoon. My daughter would have her last card moved like 10 minutes before dinner time. So it took her, like, she would just spread it all out, but they all got their stuff done. So it was kind of an interesting way for them to manage what was expected of them each day.
I really like these kind of stories, and yeah, I remember we then 10 years earlier we moved to another country. So we moved to France for a half a year, and so my son, next to going to school, 8 years old at that time, he also needed to do homeschooling for the Belgium school because then he could return. And we also created we created a burn down chart basically. So he knew that he had, I think, or was it? It was a lot, like 600 pages you needed to do by the end of it. And that we just counted everything. So we didn't say page for maths or Dutch or whatever. It was kind of work that he needed to do. But 600 of these pages, I had to do that. And so we created a burn down chart. And it was interesting to see. Every day I would just, okay, he planned at some point, because it started out because my partner said to me, like, Eve, I don't think we're going to make it. Because he was just doing 2-3 pages a day, and then she looked like nothing's going. Yeah, if it's 600 pages, you actually need to do more. And it was interesting because we made him count all the pages, or actually look at the books, how much is there, or how much pages have you already done. So that's a little bit of math. Add all these pages from all the books together, that's another math. And then say, okay, how many days do you have? Okay, that's when we return. We probably want to take a month or 3 days, 3 weeks holiday, whatever. So if you want that holiday, so subtract that. So how many days are left? And so what does that mean? Okay, so many days of work, so many pages. Divide it, again, some math to do that, which was good. That is exactly what he needed to learn in school. And then every day he knew that, okay, I should really do every day that many pages. And just giving that, and the interesting part, he's now 21, and he doesn't remember anything of that. So it's very interesting for him. Like, what? That never happened. You're inventing it. But I have pictures of everything. So, but the interesting part is that when the day he was late, he didn't do anything. I literally didn't say much. I just said, okay, just mark it on your burn down chart, and that's fine. And so the next day, the same thing. And then it's like, okay, and then he saw, okay, if I don't do that, I'm going to be late. So I have to, and then the next day he did everything, and he was again on track. And it was interesting. Actually, it started earlier. He was worked today. He did much more than before. So he said, oh, the next day I'm off. But then he took kind of 2 days off, and now he was late again. And so he updated the chart, and then he realized, okay, I have to work again. And so by the next, and we as parents, we didn't have to do anything. It really turned from push to pull. He really realized, like, okay, that's how it works. That's how many pages. And I was just asking questions curiously. Okay, just update it. And he was kind of, yeah, what does that mean? I'm saying, yeah, what does it mean? It would mean if you pick up, you would just end up a day late. So that might be, or it would be maybe you have to step up and for a couple of days do more work and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. And he ended up, I think, 1 or 2 weeks earlier, because he realized, okay, if I can do 1 page extra every day, I have an extra week of holiday. So okay, let's do this.
Right. And I think that's the power in all of those tools, right? It's giving either the person or the team the information they need to make better decisions. And sometimes it's like you said, it's not it's not going to be a perfect line down on your burn down chart, but if it's helping you see how far you're falling behind or how ahead you're getting by putting in extra effort, that's all
exactly that's the thing. Now, we got a little bit distracted on this thing. Is there any actually tip that you still want to give about remote work?
Oh,
or was that the tip about if you work with children from home, give them a Kanban board, or was that the tip? It could be,
no, it could be. Yeah. I think the work, I guess my biggest tip or shift in how I work from home now is, I tried to create some structure in my calendar to make sure I'm getting the time in to do the things that I know that are the easiest to push off my plate. I have a treadmill. I think I saw you do too. I have a desk treadmill so that I can get some walking in when I'm stuck, at my desk all day. and to try to give myself an opportunity to move and engage in a slightly different way. I've learned that that also helps me focus. So if I'm having a meeting where I really need to be actively listening and paying attention, or I'm taking a, an online class or workshop, the treadmill really helps me focus and not multitask. So I've, some of those tools I think we tend to think of it only as exercise, but I think there's ways to make your space really conducive to different parts of your day that will help you, focus or get things done depending on what you're trying to do.
Thanks for bringing that up, because indeed, I bought a walking desk in 2012, so already more than 12 years now. 11 because it was December. But the focus, people really misunderstand the fact how much help it is just walking, having things that I dislike, like doing accountancy or stuff like that. Before was like, 15 minutes, and then I get distracted because there's other things I want to do or whatever. And now I really literally, when I can walk, I can really focus much more. I feel the difference. I feel much more exhausted if I had a day at the office that I'm not moving or just sitting somewhere than if I walk. And people say, but you walk so much, or isn't that exhausting? No, it's actually the opposite. It gives me energy. And I recognize so much of what you say there. It's I'm glad to meet another person who's doing a lot of that. And I recognize a lot of that part. I really also like what you said before about making your agenda, trying to find out, okay, what works. It sounds a little bit that you're, you know probably where your high moments of energy are and low moments of energy are. That's a different, and it's the same thing. I've been to not a workshop, a speech yesterday about the cycle, so the women's cycle, and how different women are in different stages of the menstrual cycle. And it's for me, there's so much recognized about understanding where is your energy coming from and what does that mean. And so many people don't understand that, and it's of course different for men and women, but the same message stays: understanding what gives you energy, understanding why are you low on energy on a certain day. It might be because in this case, time of the month is different for women at some point. It might be because I haven't walked or whatever. And I think it's so crucial of course, you need to have the opportunity to adapt your life to that, which is not possible for certain people in certain jobs. But if we're working from home and if we can create our own agenda, it does make a huge difference. And I think that's so crucial. So thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's so important that people learn about, try to see what can you change for agenda, because that was basically the main message that that trainer gave yesterday. She said, okay, I know, she said, I'm independent, so I can do a lot of that. But she's also working as a teacher in the school. And she says, okay, the days I'm in the school, I can't control. I have to do it. I don't know the exact date, but a certain date I have to teach. And independent of what time of the month it is, that is easier or harder. But I do know that if it's such a period that for me is harder, I won't plan any sports or other activities on these evenings, because I know I might be exhausted already from school. And these are the things that we do control over. And that means sometimes saying no to friends or family because, hey, you know what, I don't have the energy for that. And that's I think that's really important.
I don't know if I saw the same speaker or maybe just a similar topic, but I did see somebody give a talk on that, on women's cycles and how it comes back to affect you at work. I think it was at the Scrum Facilitators Conference.
And in this case, it was a Dutch person, so I'm pretty sure, and it was a Dutch conversation. So, not a Belgian, but it's in Dutch conversation. So completely not into the agile world. It was very specifically aimed at women. The reason why I'm there is like I think as partners, we should know as much about the whole cycle, because it does influence the whole
Right.
family and broader. And we talked before about setting an example. I wanted to show also the example to my two children, both the boys and the girl, about, hey, this is important to know, because
Yeah.
it's that important. My daughter, she didn't want to join. She was like, oh, it's awkward. Okay, 16-year-old, I'm not going to go with my dad to these kind of things. She was also like, I'm not sure how much research, how much scientific it is, which I disagree with her, but okay, that's also part of raising children. Sometimes we disagree. But for me, the message, like, will I then still go? Yes, I will still go. I want to send the message. This is important to go and give that example.
I
And
love
I do
that.
think, yeah,
Yeah,
it is important. It's and it's there was before the talk, there was indeed someone who gave the introduction, said, okay, how open are we at work about these things? People are not going to walk around and say, hey, with a tampon or whatever, like, okay, that might understand that might feel awkward. And at the same time, it is reality. Just like if people are depressed or whatever, we should create a safe space where people feel like it's okay to
right.
talk about some of these issues. Because, well, especially in this case, this is affecting 50% of the world, 51 if I'm correct. That does have huge impact on it.
Yeah, I love that you went, and I love that you took your daughter with you for that. I mean, I
Well,
do think it
well,
is something that it's
I
hard
didn't
to
take
talk
her.
about.
I proposed to take her, and she didn't. She rejected, but still, I went.
Yeah,
Uh, but yeah, I think it's important to have these conversations. And luckily,
absolutely.
this is now an example where she didn't want to have these kind of conversations, or she didn't want to join. But luckily, on these topics, we have an open communication at home, so we can think. That's another part which saddens me about the world, especially also I think in the US, a lot of books are forbidden these days, and like, no, you can't. It's like, yeah, no, I do want to have my children being educated about all that kind of thing. It makes it a safer world for everyone. And talking about books, what is a book that you have read that you want to bring up, or that you want to talk about?
I think there's kind of two, depending on the audience, that I find myself recommending the most. And for, I think, I don't know, like the current economic climate in the US is still pretty rocky. And we're seeing a lot of layoffs of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. And so I think a lot of people are asking themselves, like, what can I do to stand out, right? I had a colleague that applied for a Scrum Master job, and there were over 3,000 applicants for a Scrum Master role,
Oh,
right? How do you stand
wow.
out now? Yeah, it's hard. And I think people are fatigued with the job search and the job market right now being that competitive. And so the first book I would say is Actionable Agile Metrics for Predictability,
And I
because
think that's the one, huh? From
it
Daniel.
is, yeah. And he's got a second edition to this that just came out, but that is
Hmm.
the first one, and that one's a little bit older. And I would still recommend that for anybody who is trying to level up their skill set as a coach and as a Scrum Master, because I do think there's all of this data that teams have that we're not using or leveraging, that can help us not just help a team improve, but also help us improve, like help us identify opportunities for coaching, and identify which teams maybe need the most help, or which teams are doing great, right? I was talking to another organization earlier this week that was saying, because of the layoffs, they have each Scrum Master in their organization is working with 4 to 5 different teams. If you have that many teams, how are you keeping track of who needs the most attention, or who's doing, who's got, who's, doesn't need a lot of attention right now, right? And so I think understanding data is really critical right now. And I think, the other piece of that is it's helping us tell a story that's less subjective. And so we're able to say, this team has improved their delivery times, or their speeds, or their predictability. And we can show that through evidence. So that book, I think, is kind of a critical thing that should be mandatory reading for all of us in the Agile space.
Thanks for bringing it up. At the same time, it's not the first time. I think it's already the third time that people recommend that book. So that's for the people over here hearing it and doubting. Yes, many people recommend it. It's like say I didn't know there was a second edition. So and so did you already read the second edition, or is it?
I have, yes, and I would say it's more advanced topics, so I would still start with the first edition before going into the second one and it's available on LeanPub right now. I don't know that it's out in print yet, but it is the same title, just volume 2. But I would still start with volume 1 if you haven't read that.
Okay, but then it's good that's volume 2, because I do think especially if it's two different books, that it would be a shame to replace the first with the second one. I'm still, well, mad is the wrong word, but I feel sad that the first edition from the Ken Beck's book is no longer available, because it's a nice example of two different versions of a book that are both wonderful to read. I really recommend a lot of people to read both of them. But of course, in this case, the first one is no longer available. Where in this case, this is available. So thanks for bringing that up, and really like that. Well, I've learned again that there is a second edition. So and I'm a big LeanPub fan, so I'll definitely go there and buy that one online. So thanks for sharing. And you had a second one, or you just talked about the second one.
So the other book I find myself recommending a lot is Making Work Visible by Dominica de Grandis. And I said, I think when you originally asked me this question, I said, it kind of depends on the audience, right? I'm not going to recommend to a bunch of senior leaders.
One.
There it is. Yes.
I'm not I didn't have it prepared on it, but Dominica has been on the show here as well. I really like her book. So it's wonderful. Yes. And I think, so thanks for bringing that up. So
a lot of senior leaders probably aren't going to get into metrics and trying to understand Monte Carlo simulations, but this introduces core concepts to them without a bunch of agile jargon, right? They understand saying no to new things coming in. They understand focusing on the highest priority work items. And it's an easy read. And so I find myself recommending that a lot to senior leaders who I'm trying to get on board with some of the things we're coaching at the team level.
Yeah, I do agree. It's I wouldn't say it's the easy version of Kanban in a way, but it's more approachable, like you say, for managers. They don't need to know all the gory details of how it works, because that could be for a scrum master or a coach or whoever you want who's working with the teams. But this is really about, okay, what is the other side that looks at these teams to understand what they're doing and how things are going there. So that's definitely an important one to mention. So in that sense, it's two different and related books in the sense that they can work together hand in hand, depending, like you say, on the audience. We want people what they want to learn. So that's a very important thing. And now go for the question that I honestly showed as the first one. What is a question that you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Well, I mean, I think the question I continue to hear in a lot of conversations is, where is Agile headed? What's next for Agile? And I don't know that any of us can definitively answer that, but I can say that I think a lot of the shift that's taking place right now, and that push for things to be quantifiable and for us to be able to show with evidence that we've helped an organization get better, or we've helped an organization deliver more value to its customers, is going to get more and more important in our space over the next couple of years. And hopefully it will stay that way. I mean, I think it's a fair question to say we invested $3 million in an Agile transformation. What did it get us? I think that we're having a little bit of a reckoning right now. And so I think where we're going next is going to be a more data-driven Agile world. And I think the question, for everybody is, are you going to be ready for that?
I really like that. And I want to add a little bit. This is interesting that when I originally, so I created this whole series in 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago by now. And originally, so most of the questions were already there. The personal Kanban and the remote question were not there, but this question was also there. And at first, so there wasn't a video, that was just writing. And many people answered with all kind of questions in all kind of directions. Where now, since I've started with the video edition, 10 years later, almost everybody talks about something about where is Agile going, what's the future of Agile, and is Agile dead, is it still? So all of that, there's a lot there. So it seems indeed that many people care, worry, think about what is next. So that is, your answer, the fact that, and I think it came out in the full time that we're talking, this is for you a lot more about data driven. I love data. I've used also very a lot of times indeed statistics to show teams like, okay, you think you're predictable, this is what you think, or you think you're not predictable, but actually if you look back at the whole statistics, we actually, and that's happened much more than the other side, people are sometimes much more predictable, but they keep promising more, and then people say you're not delivering. Yeah, but actually if you look, we know statistically how much you can deliver. So that's actually, and I do believe that is indeed helping a lot of teams, and not just the teams, the companies and everything. So it's it's also with the book, with everything that you're talking about. I really love how that is moving in every time, and it kind of, how would I say it, groups the whole conversation in a way, because that is a lot about what I think you care about. I think you muted yourself. I'm not sure.
Yes, I did. Sorry. I had a dog barking. Speaking of pets and video.
Well, that's the what was it? I had a person, I think there was a band walking outside the window of this person while we were talking, and I was like, okay. And in the beginning was like, how will we keep talking? How long will it stay? It was actually, it did distract a little bit, but for me, not much. But I do notice that that person got distracted. It's like, okay, I don't like that there's a marching band outside my window.
Where do they live that they had a marching band outside? I think that sounds amazing.
I don't remember anymore. And she did explain, or they, I don't remember. I really need to think who it was, and it doesn't matter. But it was an interesting, 5 minutes, I would say. It's probably not even 5 minutes. But of course, if you're hearing the noise, it's like, oh no, then I recognize in the after talk that person was really saying like, I felt so annoyed with it. And it's like, but yeah, it is part, like we say, it's part of reality.
Yep.
In that sense, it's interesting because indeed, with me, at some point, I heard the printer behind me starting to print, which is interesting. I thought, okay, my children, why do they now print? And nobody came into my office, so it was printed. It was probably rather urgent, but it's more than an hour ago, and it still is on the printer. So, yeah, that's also part of our lives, that I would say. Okay, I want to move to, that last question about who do you think I should ask next? Is there, and I think you have a small list of people that you wanted to invite.
Yeah, there were a couple folks on there that I think would be great guests. Nana Aban, who is the person who's heading up a lot of the effort to bring Agile practices into Africa, and more importantly, to do that with local context and local understanding of the industry there, where it's going to make the most sense.
I wanted to bring this person on, but unfortunately, if I looked for a picture, there was only a picture on LinkedIn from the Matrix, so that doesn't help us in finding that person. But so, could you say some more? So you're already saying helping out. Why do you think that person is an inspiration and is a good person to talk to?
I think he's putting a lot of energy and time and money around trying to build up a space for Agile in Africa. But he's also leveraging, he's reaching out to people all over the world to help get, I think, the momentum that it needs to stick there and stick for the industries there. But maybe even taking that a step further and thinking about some of the conversations we've had today about how things cross over into your personal life. He's also built a wellness center outside of Accra that is partnering with local traditional tribal healers in Africa and connecting them with Western doctors who are partnering to do studies on herbal remedies for things like cancer patients. And he's trying to manage all of that through a Kanban system, right? So he's prioritizing the work and making it all visible and helping this team of folks who, this isn't in Jira. It's a physical board, but he's bringing some of these practices into things that are really hopefully going to make a big difference to the people in Ghana.
I really like that, and also the fact that you say, okay, he's, what I'm also hearing, connecting like doctors, which is maybe more from the scientific part, but also to local healers, or I'm not sure what's the right name that you used, but as a way to, okay, there is different knowledge there, and it might feel in our Western world like, yeah, but that's almost voodoo or whatever, but actually it has been working in a way for them. So there's probably some things that we can learn from that part, and vice versa. I think it's really nice that you say, okay, we're grouping these, connecting these two communities in a way, and helping people learn from each other. That is really a wonderful thing. So that's and I think, what I heard you say is that Nana is also the person who's behind behind Agile in Africa conferences, or helping out. He's from Ghana, if I remember correctly.
I believe.
So it's because Africa is really big, and sometimes we talk about it as if it's a country, but it's actually a lot bigger than Europe and even some other parts. So I think it's important to also sometimes state out the countries where people are, because it sometimes feels like, well, Belgium is a very small country. I know that in your country you have cities who have more people than living in Belgium, but it is sometimes different. I would feel that in a way, the way your country is, like, okay, that's a very big country, but there is so much decided also at state level. Then, and that is also important to see that sometimes these differences. Well, you had also some more people. Who else do you want to talk about?
Well, I think I've heard you say a few folks that have already been on the show. You said Johanna Rothman was already on. It sounds like. How about Marcus Hammerberg? Have you had him on?
Marcus Hammerberg. I don't think I had him on yet. No.
He's also done some interesting work around helping bring Kanban to nonprofits. He wrote the book Bungzu, which is about his application of lean and Kanban practices to help the Salvation Army.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a great book.
We're talking about other kind of ways of using Kanban and using Agile.
Yeah, and I think, if we strip away all of the agile side of things, I mean, really what we're trying to do is match up our capacity with our demand, right? At the end of the day, it's like we have a finite amount of output and all these requests coming in. And when you think about things like what we were just talking about, where Nana's using this for a healing center and where Marcus has used this with the Salvation Army, I mean, when we start looking at nonprofits, it's critical. Like, they don't have endless resources available. And so being able to work efficiently to get the most important things done or get the most important tools delivered to people in the field it's critical. And so Marcus has a great book. I highly recommend it. And he's just a great storyteller.
I think I think these are really interesting people to talk to. And indeed, for the people who heard us talk earlier about Johanna, I think it's video 92 that she was here, and we had also a very lovely conversation. Definitely one of the people to check out and to listen to, because like you said, she's done amazing things in the agile world, but has also workshop on writing books. She has written some fiction books as well. So there's actually a lot there that much bigger. Yeah, it's just also a wonderful person, living with, I would say, the agile spirit, and well, yeah, showing a lot of that stuff. So definitely also worth talking to. Um, it's been a wonderful conversation. We're almost running out of time, and actually been a very long conversation. But yeah, like with many times today here on this show, is like it almost, the time flew by. It's just,
Yeah.
I know that it's almost 2 hours because I just watched the time. So that's how I know. Otherwise, it just felt like we just started. If people want to contact you, what would be a good way to contact you?
Yeah, we have a open Slack community for Pro Kanban. There's over 1,200 people currently in our Slack
Wow.
group. Yeah, and it's free to join. You can find the link to join on prokanban.org under the About Us section.
So
And
that's the website,
that is,
prokanban.org.
yeah, yep, that's the website. And our goal in this community is just to create a learning environment, right, where we can all learn from each other and continue to grow. And that means that there's people in here that have been practicing Agile for 20 plus years, or people that are brand new to this and are trying to understand where to get started. And I think one of the most inspiring parts of it is that you see those interactions of people from all over the world and all different backgrounds and all different skill sets, all jumping in together to collaborate and ask and answer questions. So I invite everybody listening to join us there, and that's the easiest place to get a hold of me as well.
I really like that, and it's again showing, well, setting the example, like you said before. It's about community. It's about helping people working out. It's yeah, it feels for me a lot. Yeah, what we're trying to do as a community, trying to bring people together, like you say, from different parts of the world. And it sounds like well, if it's that many people, there is a lot of diversity. I can also imagine that might bring some of their own challenges, but it also means that there is a lot of ideas, a lot of things that people can help out. So
Mhm.
definitely, I will probably. Well, I'm in too many Slack groups, and I'm thinking like, okay, will I join? And at the same time, you, well, kind of convinced me to see,
Yeah, do it.
to watch out and see what we're doing. So yeah, I really want to thank you for your time, because it's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you.
Um, it's yeah, yeah. I've really enjoyed every minute of it. It's been, yeah, such a lovely conversation, moving in all kind of directions, from, well, basically a very small village with 125 people to something worldwide community that feels, yeah, it's been wonderful. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of Agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other Agilists.